Happy day. Welcome to M.O.P classroom. I am Harinee, Assistant Professor, BA Journalism. Today's topic is Literature Review in Media Research. Before we get into the actuals of literature review, we are already aware of this method. For instance, a teacher, when she gives you an assignment and assigns a topic, what do we do as a learner or researcher? We will first look into the pre-existing knowledge or information about the topic and gather it from various sources, maybe from web, from textbooks, reference books or any other platform. So, when we gather it, we start assimilating it and ordering it and start critically analyzing it. It is as similar as this when we start writing a literature review for a research paper. So, now let us get into what is literature review. It helps us determine whether our research study is really worthy enough to start or continue. The second important point is that it also offers us a limit to the scope of our study, so that we do not go beyond a particular framework. Another important point is that literature review offers us an avenue to identify the research gap in a particular research domain. This is very important so that our research study should be offering findings or solutions to the found research gap. Another major reason for conducting literature review is that it helps us identify the research gap, so that as a researcher we would be able to cater to the research gap through our findings. And some researchers have also termed literature review as related review. I think this is more synonymous with what we have been discussing so far. That is, for a given topic, related literature or related studies in the domain space of our topic can be researched, can be borrowed and analyzed in our study. To sum it up, what is our contribution as a researcher to the existing knowledge pool? So, in order to add to the knowledge pool, what is already in the domain has to be identified, studied and critically analyzed. So, literature review gives us solution for all these three. Now, let us move on to the purpose of literature review in a research study. First, it demonstrates our familiarity with the topic, because once we do our homework by collecting literature from various sources, we will get to know about how much do we know about our own topic, like collecting information about our variables, about the methodology used and the findings and much more. Another purpose is that it offers us a space to develop a theoretical framework or even identify the methodology that can be used in our research study. By doing this, we will be able to identify variables and form a conceptual framework for our research study or research thesis. Another major purpose of literature review is that it gives us a pathway to test our research objectives and thereby also test our research hypothesis. To sum it up, it also gives us a purpose of what is the current status or current trend in the particular domain area of our topic. So, in order to attain to all of this, it is a must to have a well researched literature review in our research study. Now, after looking at the purpose of literature review, we should also be able to know how are we going to apply this in different types of studies, like say quantitative, qualitative and other studies. Now, first let us start by looking at how to use literature review in a quantitative study. So, in a quantitative study, a literature review can help us in introducing a theory or how to identify variables and find relationships between the variables. I have brought an example for today's class, that is, media's coverage shapes public perception on climate change. Here, we will be able to identify the variables starting from media's coverage, public perception and climate change. So, these are the three identified variables in the example that I have brought. In order to bundle it or find a connect between all the three, As a researcher, I may bring in a theoretical framework such as agenda setting theory. By applying this theory, I may continue my study. So, in the literature review section, I can start by explaining what agenda setting theory is and what connect does it give between these three variables, that is media's coverage, climate change and public perception. By joining the dots, the three dots here, agenda setting theory will give us a very summative knowledge about the chosen topic. And after researching about the variables as well as the agenda setting theory, and after the data analysis section, as a researcher, it is our duty to also compare the results of the current study undertaken by us as well as the findings and results of prior studies done in the domain area. That is the studies that we have chosen for the literature review. So, by comparing the results of all the studies with reference to our findings, we would be able to comment and discuss about the new relationships if found in our research study. This is another example. The topic, effect of breaking news alerts on anxiety levels among frequent news consumers during Wayanad floods 2024. By just checking out the death rate, as a consumer, you might be anxious, or it might increase or decrease or at least maintain your anxiety levels. But as a researcher for such a topic, when we are applying the literature review method for a quantitative study like this, find literature explaining the theoretical framework identified. The best theory that would explain about such a topic would be media dependency theory, as I have mentioned here, and the latest literature that has explained about the media dependency theory and thereby defining variables, collecting data, leading to data analysis, because it is a quantitative study. But what is more important is that while arriving at the results and the discussion section, we should be comparing our results with the already existing findings and results of the chosen literature review, because there is no purpose of just listing down the literature and without finding a connect with your current research topic or research paper that you are working on. If you are not able to find a connect, then it is not a wholesome process. So, this is how literature review can be used in quantitative study. Now, we will be moving on to how can we use literature review in a qualitative study. Literature review in a qualitative study must be inconsistent with the research assumptions. As you already know, more than research objectives, here in qualitative studies, researcher works with research assumptions, because during the progress of data collection in a qualitative study, it also gives a way to the researcher to amend their assumptions. So, that is why the literature review varies when it comes to qualitative study. For example, in qualitative studies specific to theoretically oriented studies such as ethnographics, cultural ethnographics, first as a researcher what we would be doing is identify the cultural concepts, or to be very specific, identify the variables first and set the stage initially in the beginning of the literature review itself. These are the objectives that I will be studying in my research, and then proceed with variable wise explanation in the literature review. But on the other hand, in grounded theory or when you are studying a phenomena, this cannot be possible, because it is a new concept that you will be investigating about. So, totally exploratory in nature. In such a case, it is very hard for us to set the stage initially itself, because only while collecting data we will be able to add more clarity towards our qualitative research topic. in a qualitative research study, we can either use literature review at the beginning or at the end while explaining the results. So, this is how we use it in a qualitative study. Here the emphasis on theoretical framework is not significant because here we are proceeding only with the variables chosen for the study. Now, let us look into the example that I have brought in order to understand the concept even more better. Most of the researchers have chosen young adults, Gen Zs as their sample population. So, let us also get into a topic related to the same sample population. Example, how young adults interpret news credibility on social media platforms. So, this is a question for a qualitative research study. It is hard to collect data only and analyze it when we are questioning about the news credibility of the younger generation. So, for this a qualitative method is required and researcher can use various types of data collection for collecting the qualitative data. The researcher can choose a methodology like in-depth interviews or focus group interviews in order to collect qualitative data for such a topic. For instance, the researcher may come up with the following answers at the end of the data collection. For example, the first answer could be, the young adults would have mentioned that credibility majorly depends on the source of information, or some may also answer that the usage of infographics or visuals make them decide the news credibility, or some may even say because my friends have shared it or my relatives have shared it or the celebrities whom I follow, they have shared it, I will start believing that it is a credible information. Some may have also mentioned that platform bias as one of the key indicator of news credibility. Platform bias, say for example, any information posted on Twitter or LinkedIn is more credible than any information posted on Instagram. There is a common bias among the young adults. While collecting the qualitative data, the researcher is able to come up with these themes, that is these 4 themes that I just explained it to you. But as a researcher, you cannot end your study with this, because a qualitative exploratory study cannot be restricted with just the collected data, where here the literature review helps us how to connect the already collected answers for the research question or the topic. Probably a research study would have told engagement metrics could also be a key credibility indicator. More likes, more shares, more comments also matter while deciding the credibility of the news that the young adults consume. We should be able to bring in such results from the pre-existing knowledge pool in order to compare and analyze. Now, let us look into a brief explanation about the structure of literature review. How to actually write a literature review. There are 4 types of structures when it comes to literature review: chronological, thematic, methodological and theoretical. First, chronological structure. As the term suggests, we are following a timeline. In your literature review section, you can start the latest to the oldest literature collected, and you can summarize each of the literature collected. But you should be very cautious here. Your role as a researcher is just not to summarize each study that you have identified from the knowledge pool. Your role here is to critically analyze it. Critically analyze why such a methodology was chosen by the researcher, or how a theoretical framework identified by the researcher could also be borrowed for your study. The next type of structure is thematic structure. Here also I have brought another example so that we will be able to understand it even more better. Example is that inequalities in migrant health outcomes. If a topic like this is chosen for your study, Here again the variables are inequalities and migrant health outcomes. These are the two variables, and for our study we can fix these two variables as the central theme. But we can also divide the central theme into various subsections such as healthcare policy, awareness, language barriers, cultural attitudes, income level, economic background, etc. All of these play a major role while discussing about the inequalities and migrant health outcomes. So, a central theme divided into various subsections. The next type of structure is methodological structure. This is very simple because with mere identification of methodologies used by the other researcher, you will be able to analyze a study and also compare it with other studies. The last structure, it is theoretical structure, where you have identified theories, you have identified variables, concepts from various other research studies that has already been found in the research pool, and you borrow it for your study. Either you take up that route, or you do not stop with just borrowing it. You can also come up with a conceptual framework for your existing study, like borrowing variables from various other studies and how am I going to use it in my own research study. So, to summarize today's session, we looked into what is literature review, how the literature review is used in various studies such as quantitative, qualitative, and the core purpose of literature review in a research study. And we also looked into the various types of structure while writing the literature review. That's all for today's class. Thank you. For more videos related to research and other educational concepts, like, share and subscribe to M.O.P Classroom.